Thank you very much for being here. So now, carrying on from Marcus' presentation, we can dive deeper into a practical example of what we are discussing. And of course, the reason I'm here to do it is we're focusing on Portugal. In Lisbon, I'm Portuguese, and I've worked with Lisbon real estate and tourism markets for over a decade. And we've been invited to give our insight on what's going on there and how it kind of confirms what Marcus was just talking about. Okay? So VIC is a developer which is focused mostly on new construction, and it has a management team with more than 20 years of creating something which is now unique in Portugal, which is whole new neighborhoods. The market in Portugal is very pulverized because the ownership of buildings, for example, for a new, is very granular, but VIC Properties has a unique value proposition in the sense that it's the only player with the capability to do a new neighborhood now in Lisbon that takes into account the reading of the market trends that have been verified over the last few years. So why is Lisbon such a hot market at the moment? And of course, there are places which are attractive from a fiscal perspective. There are places who are welcoming foreign investor with solutions such as golden visas. There are places which offer good value for money. There are places which are very secure, have good infrastructure, modern living, and all that. An undersupplied market and tourist destinations, because as we know, and Portugal confirms this, residential demand especially follows tourism booms. So tourism gives visibility to destinations, and soon, very, very soon, with a delay of maybe a year, there's growing demand in the residential market. But what Lisbon does, there's the coexistence of all these factors right now and over the last, since perhaps 2014, so over the last 5 to 6 years, there's the coincidence of all these aspects bringing Lisbon into the spotlight of foreign investors and foreign inhabitants who want to come and live in Portugal and in Lisbon, such as, for example, we saw Madonna now lives in Lisbon, Eric Cantona now lives in Lisbon, Christian Louboutin has a house in Lisbon and Comporta, Philip Stark lives in Lisbon. So a lot of these people are moving in Lisbon, and of course also corporate players are moving in, installing their European hubs of relatively good size in and around Lisbon, because it's a good place to attract talent. The cost of living is cheap. They can get engineers, new blood into their organizations. Out of Lisbon, everybody speaks English. They like the lifestyle that Lisbon offers to everyone because you're close to the sea, and it's kind of like there was a campaign by the Tourism of Portugal back in 2005 calling Portugal Europe's West Coast, in the sense that it had a few of those Californian values of the beach lifestyle, but also the openness, the fact that it's welcoming, that it's inclusive, and also that it's friendly for digital players moving in, especially since Web Summit was moved from Ireland to Portugal, where it's going to stay for 10 years. The first 2 editions already happened, so it's going to stay in Portugal, in Lisbon, for at least 8 more years. And that has given a lot of buzz to the startup scene in Lisbon. Okay? As we see, finally, after a double dip recession, so we had the crisis that almost everybody had in 2008, 2009, 2010. Then we had the sovereign debt crisis, which hit Portugal particularly hard in 2011 and 12. finally on the coat of tourism and this new dynamic aspect of the business profile of the country being in a permanent evolution. There's a wealth generation, and that is cascading into society. So there's more disposable income, and finally there's more demand for new construction. So there was the appetite to move, but people didn't have access to credit, for example, because the taps were shut. But now there's a bit of credit again, of course not 100% as Marcus mentioned. So people who had delayed decisions in their life are now moving ahead with purchasing decisions, and demand is heating up locally, boosted further by the international demand that I mentioned earlier. As we can see, the number of property transactions per year has increased. It was 175,000 last year. The peak was actually 2005, so this is what's happening now. But only about 11,000 of these 175 are new construction. So there is hunger for novelty. My apologies for moving forward, but just to contrast the data. Added to that, the value that you get for square meter, of course these are aggregate numbers for Portugal, are still very competitive for a European capital that offers the quality of living, the safety, and the friendliness that Portugal does, and that Lisbon does. And that is also what happens here regarding Portugal. These are all aggregate data, so Monaco is just a city, but in the UK you can't really compare London to the UK, you can't really compare Paris to France, and so on and so forth. So the value is tremendous for what you can get for the same amount of money. And in Lisbon especially, the most luxurious apartment in Lisbon is going to be at around the same price of a relatively cheap apartment in a not so good arrondissement in Paris. Of course, as we see, the market is increasing. The demand is concentrated on 2, 3, 4 bedroom units. There's no longer the demand for bigger than that. So these are modern people, modern families, modern size who are moving into the market. All these trends and the combination of studying all of this information is what made VIC Properties move ahead with its first big project. So even though people have been in management team have been involved in this for decades, it is a new organization moving into a new project of a type that didn't exist since before the crisis in 2009 in Portugal, called Prata Riverside Village, which is, as we see, the city grows originally from the center, of course. Lisbon started with actually when the Phoenicians got to what is now Lisbon. It has grown, and now our projects are going to be the last riverfront plot in the city. Park of Nations, if you know, Park of Nations, if you know, is the area that was built for the '98 Universal Exposition. It is now a fully consolidated neighborhood in residential, retail, office, and it's quite buzzing. And the prices there are on par with the city center. But as Lisbon has nowhere else to go, unless we build islands, there's nowhere else for Lisbon to go. We have the last plot, and that's where we're going. Also, the fact that it's actually the very last place that things can be done at this scale, but quite close to everything. So if we look at the size of the plot, but in a radius of about 10 to 15 minutes, you are everywhere in Lisbon. So hospitals, international schools, airport. And if we look beyond that, half an hour you're at the beach, which is a feature of Lisbon, which is usually appreciated. So if you go there, you go down to the city center. This is the new park that's being built, and this is the next project over which is going to allow us to have the control not only of this neighborhood, but the next neighborhood as well, and really curate both projects and make them work together and in something truly unique in the Lisbon context. This is how the plots are going to be organized. It's already in construction. Okay. It's next to the river, designed for a very special lifestyle, which is sort of a continuation of what the Park of Nations has, but not too much, because most of the riverfront is actually the oceanarium and retail. And just to show you a bit of what we're talking about, as an example, so the Lisbon that I think almost everybody knows, of course, quite an old city. It's been renewed over the last few years by a dispersed group of smaller players, but nobody has really had the capabilities to offer something new at scale in the residential sector next to the Park of Nations, which is this area that we are seeing now. And this is what VIC is doing right now. It's creating a new neighborhood, which is this one. So these buildings are already in existence. The park is opening later this month. And this is how it's going to look and feel living there, which is something that we believe is truly special. Not rare, it's unique. There's nothing else like it. It's the last plot available. So there's 10 hectares of public space. It's not just for residents, it's for everybody. It's going to have shops that we own and will curate. And of course, the design is by Renzo Piano, which most of you, I would say, well, especially in London, where one of the flagship projects is. He was the dreamer behind the project that we are now executing and raising out of the ground.